Hello and welcome to the Prime Reckoning. I'm Julie and this is a channel for women over 50. Before we get started on our topic today, I do have a little bit of an update on my health. I've mentioned in the last couple of videos, I think that I've had a lot of trouble with my stomach lately. And I'd been to my PCP. I'd gotten an appointment with a stomach specialist for, I think it was around the middle or end of August. And I figured out what the problem was. So don't have to deal with the doctors anymore. I had doubled up on one of my medicines to kind of help calm me down after I lost my kitty. And that was what was causing the problem. I stopped taking it for several days and my stomach cleared up. So that's great news. I also have another update on my weight loss journey. I think I mentioned to you guys, that I'm doing kind of a modified carnivore diet. I'm eating meat and vegetables and limited dairy. Almost no sugar at all. Some days I have a thing of yogurt, which has 5 grams of sugar. That's all the sugar and no carbs at all. So no starchy vegetables, no potatoes, no sweet potatoes, nothing like that. I just do like green vegetables and mushrooms and onions and things like that. So I have lost another 10 pounds on that diet. So I'm now down a total of 20 pounds from where I started. So, oh my gosh, so excited about that. Wonderful news, and hope that I continue to lose weight. I am enjoying the diet. Like I mentioned, I got an air fryer and I'm having different foods every night. So it's working well for me. So that is all a good thing. So I wanted to talk to you guys today about my marriage and my divorce story. I mentioned that I was going to talk a little bit about this. So I was married for 18 years. I was 25 when I got married, which, looking back at it, I think was way too young to get married. He was actually 17 years older than I was, and our marriage was his third marriage. But age difference was never one of our problems, but we had a lot of problems, but that wasn't one of them. So there were two huge problems in our marriage. The first one was that he had 2 teenage daughters, which was very difficult for me. I don't have any children of my own because I didn't want any children of my own. I don't do children, really. It's just not my thing. And most of the fights in our marriage centered around his children, and we'll get into some of the details a little bit later, not grisly details. I'm just kind of giving you an overview of what happened. And the second huge problem in our marriage was that I believed that the man that I married suffered from borderline personality disorder. Now, this was never confirmed. It's just my opinion based on what I lived and what I read through my studies of the condition later on. But I didn't know that this was the case in the beginning. Again, I'll get to that. So, talking about personality disorders, there are 3 different types, or what they call clusters, of personality disorders. So you have a cluster A personality disorder, which is paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypical, which I don't know a lot about. And then you have cluster B, which is borderline personality disorder, antisocial, histrionic, and narcissistic. I think most people are familiar, especially with the narcissistic personality disorders. And then you have a cluster C personality disorder, which is avoidant, dependent, and obsessive compulsive. So borderline personality disorder in particular is characterized by intense fear of abandonment, severe mood swings, unstable relationships, and impulsive behavior. Borderline personality disorder, or I'll just call them borderline from here on out, people are hardest on the people they care the most about, because you've got that fear of abandonment, that fear they're going to leave you, that fear they're going to hurt you. So they lash out at the people they care about the most, which is one of the reasons that make this so terribly difficult. And honestly, I should have seen this coming, because his father had this, although to a much greater extent than he did, and his uncle had it as well. So he came by it, honestly, was passed down through his family genetics. And before we got married, I remember watching his parents together, and I remember telling him, I said, if you ever treat me like your father treats your mother, I'm going to leave you. Again, it was never quite to that extent. It wasn't as bad, but that doesn't mean it wasn't bad and it wasn't hard for me. So how did this manifest in the marriage? Basically, I was getting yelled at all the time. I thought I was just a bad wife. It's coming into this very young, and you think you're going to get married, and when we're kids, Disney especially told us that once you met your prince, once you met your love of your life, it was happily ever after that. We can laugh about that now, but definitely wasn't the case. So what my life was like, borderline people can be super loving, put you on a pedestal, treat you fantastic, take care of you, buy you flowers, do all the things, and then once you're up on that pedestal, wham, they kick it out from under you. So I would get yelled at for things that happened when I wasn't even there. I would come home from work and say that a phone call was received from somebody else, not even me, and I didn't know anything about it, but I would get yelled at. It was my fault when I got home, so that really blindsided me. Every day when I came home from work, I would be interrogated. He would shine a light in my face, and he basically accused me of having an affair almost every day. They also take all your deepest secrets that you've told them, that you trust this person, you share with them, and then they use those secrets against you, which is incredibly painful. Then there's the gaslighting. They do something and then they say, oh no, I didn't do that, or they say something, oh no, I never said that, you're crazy, and they really make you feel like you're the problem, you're the crazy one, all this is in your head. It's just insane. There's a lot of control that goes on. So his youngest daughter had come to live with us for quite a few years, and really right when we first got married. It wasn't very long. And he taught her how to forge my signature so that she could sign legal documents such as tax returns and things like that without my knowledge at all. When I mentioned that, I didn't think this was cool, I didn't think this was a good idea, I was still, oh, you're such a baby, it's no big deal, it's just, I don't have to wait for you to get home and she can sign all this stuff. So that was incredibly stressful for me, and I felt like I had a right, to my own signature, but he took that away from me. He hid from me. He worked for himself, and as a result, his income was kind of sporadic, and I never knew. There wasn't a a weekly or bi-weekly paycheck when I know, okay, this much money is coming to our account on this day. He had his own business. He often accepted cash for payments. So I never knew exactly how much money was coming in, and he used that against me again and gave tens of thousands of dollars of our money to his kids without telling me. I finally got to the point where I told him one day, I said, look, I said, we need to sit down and figure out where all our money is going. There should be more money, what's going on here. And that's when he confessed and said that he had given just tons of money to his kids. So that was a huge betrayal. And in this marriage, I had no moral support from him. I had no emotional support from him. Every time I was upset about something and I wanted to talk about something and I'd bring it up, I would just get screamed at, and then he wouldn't talk to me for several days. And then he would come back to me and say, I'd kind of be upset and grumpy. And then 3 days later, he'd ask me, what's wrong? Now, I could have answered that question two different ways. I could have told him what was actually wrong, and the whole cycle would have started over again. The yelling, the not talking, all that. Or I could say, nothing's wrong. Which is, after not very long, I learned that saying nothing is wrong was the easiest thing to do, because telling him the truth never made me feel any better. I never got any resolution to the issues that I was having. So I got no emotional support from him. So what do you do when that happens? Well, in my case, I turned elsewhere for emotional support. And, when you're not getting any emotional support from your marriage, it's pretty much over at that point, at least according to me. So then people say, well, why did you stay for so long? Why didn't you leave? And the thought of leaving was on my mind for many, many, many years. Like I said, things started going badly almost right away. And so the thought was always there, should I leave? Do I need to leave? But part of the problem with these personality disorders is they do what is called hoovering. So when you're just about to leave, they suck you back in. They start treating you really well. They start talking to you. They say, we're going to, everything's going to be great. We're going to fix everything and everything's going to be fine. And some little part of me kind of kept hoping that things eventually would go back to where they were in the beginning and things would be good again. So that is the cycle of being involved with somebody who has borderline personality disorder. So that's frustrating. And then, like I said, I apologized all the time. I apologized for stuff that I never did. Like I said, I wasn't even there when stuff happened that I apologized for it. But it was easier to say I was sorry and just keep the peace. It was incredibly lonely, very, very lonely. And I did end up with PTSD, which started, and this is a whole nother story. I'm not going to go into the PTSD and how I treated it today, but this will be a story for another day. But my PTSD actually started about the time his youngest daughter moved in with us, and continued for over 20 years before I was able to figure out I didn't know I had PTSD, obviously, and figure that out. So like I said, that is a story for another day. So about 15 years into this 18-year marriage, I was in the bookstore and I was browsing the self-help section. And I came across a book that was titled Walking on Eggshells. You may be familiar with this book if you've been in a similar situation. But I flipped over the back of the book, and it had a number of questions on the back of the book. Is this happening to you? Is this happening to you? And I read the back of this book, and all of these things were happening to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is not all in my head. I am not the main problem here. I'm not the bad guy here. I'm not an awful wife. This is what's going on. So I took the book home and I read it. And this was the breaking point for me, that I had a name, I had a cause. Okay, this is what's going on. And the book basically said you have two choices when you're in a relationship with this type of person. And you can't always walk away from these relationships, but in my case, that was an option for me. And the book basically said you can walk away, or you can learn how to deal with this disorder. And then they have a whole workbook about that. If you're interested, it's available, and I'll link that information below. And I thought to myself, excuse me, grab a drink. I thought to myself, I don't want to do this. I am not going to change the way I deal with this person just to keep him in my life. I'm done. I'm walking away from this marriage. So, for the last 3 years of my marriage, I fought and fought and fought to get divorced. And like I said, it took me 3 years. First of all, if you live in North Carolina like I did at the time, and you want to get divorced, you might want to contemplate moving to another state. Y'all, the North Carolina divorce laws are so archaic, and they did me no favors at all. You have to go through the mandatory 1-year separation, and they don't give you a break even in abusive situations. You still have to go through that. And some of the other laws were kind of messed up. I feared that I would have to pay him alimony, because for the last 10 years of our marriage, he did nothing. He didn't work. He just sat around. I don't know what he did. He sat around all day, and I was afraid I was going to get stuck paying alimony and get stuck in a job that I hated because I had a huge alimony payment. But fortunately, that didn't happen. The only thing I really lost was a big chunk of my retirement. So I'm in this fight. I'm trying to get him to move out of the house. I'm trying to get him to agree to sign papers. And he would just ignore me. The first time I told him, I said, I want a divorce, he just ignored me. And then the next day, he's talking like things are normal again. And I just had to say it over and over and over and over again. And I got to the point where I didn't even want to talk to him anymore. I would just leave him notes. Like, I'm just gonna tell you what I need to tell you. Write it down on this piece of paper. I don't even want to talk to you anymore. So he fought me and fought me and fought me and fought me. But then for some reason, at the end of this, he finally moved out. So I had that. And I had informed my lawyer, and one of the things that's in these Walking on Eggshells books is some information that you can give to your divorce lawyer in the case, so they understand that. Whoops, knocked the microphone. So I had given all that to my divorce lawyer, and I said, we just need to hold on to this, get everything ready and hold on to it until he agrees. And then at the end of 3 years of fighting, and I don't know what purpose those 3 years was, but he finally just gave in. He never even hired a lawyer. At the end, he just signed the paperwork, and then that was it. It was done. So I don't know why he fought and fought and fought, and then It could have been a really ugly court battle that cost me a lot more money than it did. My lawyer fees ended up being, I don't know, a couple $1,000s, I think. So financially, it wasn't too bad. It could have been a lot worse. And he just walked away. Like I said, I had to give him a big chunk of my retirement. That was North Carolina law. And a lot of me felt like I was being punished for being the financially responsible one. But that is what it is. And I got over it in the end. So it was worth it to me, to give that up and walk away. But I mean, as far as property, I pretty much got everything. I walked away with all the contents of the house. He didn't want anything. So that I never understood that. I still don't understand that, but that's what it was. So that is the story of my marriage and divorce. It was definitely a difficult time. And then both professionally and personally, those last 10 years of the marriage were very rough because, like I mentioned before, I hated my job, I hated my marriage, just stressed 24 hours a day. So got rid of all that, and I'm feeling much better now. So, do you have a divorce story? I would like to hear about it. Drop a note in the comments, and we can have a discussion about it. So let's move on to the Badass Woman of the Week. So this week's Badass Woman, I am not going to be able to pronounce her name. I will put it on the screen for you to take a look. I think this is how I pronounce this is Bohali maybe, but I heard her say it and it didn't sound anything like that. So anyway, this 16-year-old teenager, very, very young lady, invented a groundbreaking safety device that looks like an earring. The alerting earpiece, as she calls it, hides a tiny camera, a GPS tracker, and an emergency alert system. When pressed, so all you have to do is kind of press this thing on your ear, it takes a photo of the person who's attacking you or harassing you, whatever's going on, and sends a distress alert with the wearer's live location to trusted contacts and police. Now, I watched a video of this young lady talking about this. She's now 22 years old. She lives in South Africa, and they are still looking for funding for this device. So if I can find something about the funding information, I'll put that in the description box below as well. But an amazing safety device and something that could potentially save your life, because it transmits all that information secretly and very quickly so that responders can get to you and get you out of the situation that you're in. So, amazing stuff for a very, very young lady to have invented. So hopefully she can get the funding that she needs and get this device out to ladies that need this for their safety. So that is all I have today. If you would, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. If you hit the notification bell, you will be alerted to all my future video uploads. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. All the links are below. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time, everybody.